So today's workshop is on nailing growth. That's the topic of our masterclass today. And I believe that there are three things required for growth. And these aren't very contentious. The first two are quite obvious. And the first is hard work. I do believe that growth requires hard work. I don't think anyone is going to get away with growing a successful business without hard work, and I hope you'll agree that that's what brought you here, is hard work. The second thing that I think is required for growth is skill. And each of you will have, I'm sure, technical skills related to your specific business. It's not always required, but it's quite usual. If you're running a marketing agency, then I'm sure it's because you were first good at marketing. If you're in construction, I'm sure it's because that's where your skills started. But you will also need skills in running your business, in leading, and in growing. And generally speaking, we will have to learn these skills, but that's okay. Learning is a lifelong journey, and the good news is that every day is a learning day. I can help with the learning of the skills. But the third thing that's really important, I think a lot of people underestimate, is the importance of making decisions. I do believe that it's absolutely critical. In order to grow your business, you are very good at making decisions. Now, I'm an expert in making bad decisions. I've made many bad decisions in my life. I've been broke in my life, and perhaps some of you will have been there too. It's a painful place to be. But just think about it for a moment. Think about your three worst decisions. How much different would your life be? How much better might your life be? How much richer or wealthier might you be if you hadn't have made those three poor decisions? And that's really what we're going to be focusing on today, is the power of better decision making. I don't believe that any of my business errors came from lack of hard work, not that I'm willing to admit. Maybe one or two of them might have been through lack of skill, and hopefully they were lessons. But the really bad mistakes were poor decisions on my part. So how do we make better decisions? A decision is an idea that you act upon. Really, that's all it is. So it will make sense that if we have more ideas, we're more likely to have a better idea, and if we think those through, then hopefully we're going to make better decisions. Lots of ideas, better decisions. The thing about entrepreneurs is that we tend to grab on the first idea that we come up with. And that's not always the best one. And because we're social animals, another problem that we have is that we're quite fond of hearing somebody else's idea and grabbing onto that as well. But if you think about it, that's not really the best technique either. These are what we call heuristics. They're mental shortcuts that we make because they're easy, not because they necessarily lead to a better outcome. A best decision for you in business isn't necessarily the best decision for me in business. A great investment opportunity for you is not necessarily a great investment opportunity for me. Even the best idea that you perhaps had last year might be a fatal idea if you continue it today. We live in a fast-moving and uncertain time, and the central skill that we need for that is agility. And what underscores that is improved and more powerful decision-making. We look towards other people and we look towards other times for best ideas, but there is a better way. And that's really what's going to underscore the process that we're going to take you through today. Now, at the heart of what we're going to be focusing on is that better ideas, thought through, gives us more options, leads to better decisions and better outcomes. Now, we can't eliminate all risks entirely. We can't avoid all mistakes, but mistakes are costly. And I'm sure many of you will recognize just how costly some of your own mistakes have been. I certainly have been there myself. If we can avoid just a few of those costly mistakes, that is a lot of extra resource, time, team, and money to put into future, better decisions, future investment opportunities that we wouldn't otherwise be able to play at had we not made the mistakes. We can't eliminate all risks and mistakes, but we can certainly do some better thinking, some better decision making, and hopefully avoid some of those. Now, your next customer will be different. Your 100th customer will be different from your first customer. Hopefully your 1000th customer, should you get there, is going to be different from your first customer. So the decision-making process has to be iterative. Any decision that you make today will have to change over time. What we're focusing on today are tactics for growth. And tactics by their nature are better thought out, better played out if we make better decisions. But they also have to change over time. So whatever you come up with in today's workshop has to be played out again and again and again. This is not a one-off activity. This isn't finding a shortcut. It's finding a system and a method to repeatedly make better decisions. Lifelong learning, hard work, and better decisions is what's at the heart of what we're going to be focusing on today. Okay, So the subtitle for today is 20 Ways to Get More Customers. That's the title because it's enticing. Well, what it doesn't mean is executing all 20. What I'm not giving you here on a plate is 20 fantastic ideas that you can go off and execute. No, I'm giving you 20 ideas to explore because individually none of us would come up with 20 ideas. On a table you might come up with 5. The whole room you still wouldn't come up with all 20 ideas. I'm giving you the food for thought so that you can then decide, test, evaluate and measure and figure out a little network of maybe 3 or 4 of these that work well together. But remember, they will work well together today. Today's decision isn't necessarily the best decision in a year's time, your 100th customer, and so on. Okay, let's get started. So the first thing that I want to give us as a context for how we're going to look at this is just how wide we want to cast a net when we are looking for more customers. And the reason for this is that we have a tendency of thinking that we have 7 or 8 billion customers. And of course, it's not true. We are repeatedly told, we know it is the conventional wisdom to go for a niche. My analogy here is spearfishing for that. The question is just how narrow is that niche? Because depending on how narrow your audience is will depend on the tactical approach that you make to getting more customers. If you need to speak to everybody on the planet, it will be very different from if you're just looking at a target audience of 10 or 20. It will also be very expensive. And one of the issues is that we tend to see a lot of mass marketing. And that tends to skew our thinking into believing that mass marketing is ideal. Sure, get lots of money, which is generally debt, spend it on mass marketing, you can grow. This is how big companies grow, often by brute force with other people's money. But most of the people in this room will be startups or smaller businesses where you have to do this the hard way. Hard work, learning, and better decisions. Okay, the table here is going from mass market on the left-hand side over to spearfishing on the right-hand side as per my pictures. Let me talk you through this a little bit. First of all, strategic marketing. Strategic marketing generally implies, I'm going to go from the bottom up in my table here, that you're looking at a customer that is going to spend more than $1 million in a year. So we're looking at customers that are going to have a big spend. And if you're looking at customers that are going to spend more than $1 million per year, the relationship that you likely will need to have with that customer is one-to-one. This is not going to be a mass marketing affair. You're not going to launch Google ads and people clicking buy and using their credit card for $1 million. It's obvious, but I want to draw as much attention to this as possible. And your target audience of those one-to-one relationships is generally very small. The median for that, based on studies, is 14. It's quite typical that companies that are looking for a spend of $1 million plus per customer at any one time are targeting an average, it's the median of 14 customers. That's the audience size. So if you're looking at something like that, either very high ticket value, very small audience, then it needs to be a very strategic approach and it needs to be very one-to-one. You with me? We move along a little bit to what I would call focus marketing, and now we're looking at a typical spend of between about $100,000 to $1 million. These are rough averages. But the audience size grows as well. And now the relationship span is widening as well. It's not so much a one-to-one, but you might have a relationship with a few, the nature of the marketing effort is more likely to be the same for more than one customer, whereas it's absolutely unique in the 1 million plus range. Here, the typical target audience size is about 80, and it's typically split down, not 80 the people that are same or 80 businesses that are same, but typically split down into 2 or 3 or 4 verticals, say groups of about 20 customers. And those groups can be marketed to. You might market to one industry with one message with 20 people in, and another industry might have another 20 target accounts in it. You might market to them with a slightly different message. And that's how you would market to those on a focused marketing approach. As the audience widens, we're looking at a smaller ticket value, we're looking at a typical audience in the hundreds, and we now need to do what we call programmatic marketing. We've got to now reach this audience in a way that we wouldn't be able to reach if we were simply having one-to-one conversations with businesses. As soon as that audience widens, the nature of the relationship and the nature of the conversations materially has to change. And the error that I see most businesses, particularly small businesses, making is they take a programmatic approach when really they should be more focused or perhaps even strategic in their marketing. even if their ticket value at the moment isn't at the sort of ultra high range on the bottom row there, that really the audience isn't as big as they think they are, but they're looking for a programmatic approach. And the reason is that a programmatic approach appears easy. If I can send out an email and software allows me to send out that email to 10,000 people, that's fantastic. I just need a percentage. But this can be a fool's errand. But we will get into this. We will get into the tactics as we go through this. As we go left, we're looking at mass marketing. And as we go to the far left, again, it's mass marketing below that sort of 10K per year average spend. We're looking at reaching potentially millions of people. And of course, tactically, that looks very different from if we're just targeting one or two. We have 20 tactics, 20 growth channels through which we can gain new customers. And they're split up into 4 groups. And the first of those is promote. Promote is relatively easy to understand. This is about standing on a rooftop with a megaphone and getting your message out. We will have in the promote channel 5 different tactics through which you can promote. By the way, for those of you that are making notes, and I always like to make notes for my own thinking, but we will get the slides at the end. So I will give you the slides at the end, so you'll have all of this information as well. Promote is typically top of funnel. It is typically that early stage of making ourselves known to our potential audience. There's usually more work to be done after promote. It doesn't work by itself. But it's also the most fun. It's also the most visible. It's what we see our competitors doing. So we will look first at the promote channels. It's also quite typically associated with mass market activities. But there is still a niche opportunity within each of the promote channels, and we'll go through those. Secondly, as a category, we have create. You have to create your product and service. You also have to create a whole load of collateral, sales material. You have to create content. You have to create persuasive written material and examples of work. You have to create quotations. You have to create all sorts of stuff in order to persuade your customers to buy. Create often doesn't work by itself. You still maybe need to promote some of what you create. But we have 5 distinct channels through which you can create stuff, and we'll get into the stuff as we go through this, and that are individual and unique channels and opportunities for you to attract new customers. Our third channel is relate. How many of you are in B2B? So most of us. How many of you does the customer not buy online? I.e. you have to talk to them, you have to see the whites of their eyes, you have to engage with the customer, so pretty much everybody. So there is always an element of relating, of building a relationship with the customer. A lot of business is done on trust. This is why it's so often difficult to get a customer to move from another supplier, another business to you. Even if they don't particularly like their current supplier, for them there is a risk in moving. And so you have to be a lot more appetizing, a lot more attractive for a customer to jump ship, even if your offer looks like a better deal at first glance. We have to build relationships. You have to build a brand in which your customers trust you. And we'll be going through our 5 tactics for how we can relate better to customers as growth channels. And the 4th channel we have is leverage. Leverage is all about how you can connect with other businesses, other people, other relationships that exist out in the marketplace already. Effectively, how you can stand on somebody else's ladder and put you up 2 or 3 steps in order to make your voice more widely heard, in order to get your message out to more people, in order to have more people doing the work for you. And this, for me, is the most interesting of all the 4 channels, because potentially with leverage, you can reach a far wider audience, and you're not only leveraging their reach, you're leveraging their trust when we use leverage channels. As I said at the beginning, I'm going to give you 20 new ideas, and I'm going to help you work through those ideas. But what you'll do by the end of the workshop today is bring together a constellation, typically 3 ideas that will work beautifully together. You will have to do some testing. That work is on you. Hard work, learning, decision making. You will have to go and do that work. But the effort here is to have a higher awareness of 20 possible tactics in order to select 3 that work together. We will start by brainstorming. We will come up with ideas, we'll ideate. After that, at the end, once we've gone through 20, you will do some work on prioritizing, and you will spell out how you could actually test these. You then go off and test, and once you've done your tests and validate them, you put more resources behind it and focus on what will be your golden 3. And then don't forget that it won't be those 3 forever. It never is. You have to iterate and iterate and iterate. Okay, now the issues that we tend to have as humans is that we have 3 distinct biases in choosing and coming up with ideas and choosing what to proceed with. And the first bias we have is that some of these will be unfamiliar. You've simply never heard of them before. And One of our biases as humans is that if something is unfamiliar, we don't generally go towards it. If you're simply a digital dinosaur, then you may not be attracted to using digital methods for marketing, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't use them. Likewise, some of the leverage channels. Being unfamiliar is not a reason, but it's a bias that we have, and so we must be aware of it. A second bias is that some of these channels will simply be unfavored, and the reason that they might be unfavored is you might have tried them before and been stung. You may have had a bad past experience, or you may have heard that somebody else has had a bad past experience. Again, this is not a reason to hold that bias. Times will have changed. We want to ideate all 20. And the third bias is that some of them are just plain uncomfortable. One of them in here is public speaking, for example. And if something is uncomfortable, again, we tend to avoid it, but it's not a reason to hold a bias. If it's an idea that can grow your business, then you should hopefully pursue it, or find somebody else that can pursue it on your behalf if public speaking comes up as a good idea. And the issues that we have with these three biases are four distinct problems. The first is past experiences. So we are very much guided by past experience. If you've had a negative past experience with a particular tactic, you are likely to say, well, I tried that and that never worked. Equally problematic is when you've had a past good experience and you think that it's the golden goose, but it's no longer the golden goose. Again, you have to continually iterate and ideate. If you did Google Ads last year, they may not necessarily work this year, and vice versa. The second issue is friends and word of mouth. Friends in this room, if you sit down in a business meeting or a business setting and somebody says, I'm absolutely killing it on Instagram for B2B, you go, okay, maybe I should do Instagram, especially if 3 or 4 people start to say it. That doesn't necessarily mean it works for you. Of course, explore the idea. Friends and word of mouth can misguide us both in the negative and positive sense. The fourth issue is that the media that we consume, and therefore the advertising that we consume, this is a huge issue. Every day you walk into the street and there are billboards. There are TV ads. You see online ads all the time. And this creates a massive bias that you think, maybe I should be doing what they're doing. But the issue with that, of course, is that they are bigger companies, they have bigger budgets, and also you have no clue what their objective is, and you have no clue if their marketing is even working. But of course, we're biased towards it. If they're putting up billboards, they must be getting loads of customers putting up billboards. Maybe I should put up billboards, and so it goes on. And the fourth issue is your competition, seeing what your competitors do. Now, on Strategy Day, we talk very much about how you are different from your competitors, yet we still tend to look at our competitors and think, well, if it's working for them, maybe it's working for me. But in actual fact, in order to penetrate a market, in all likelihood, the marketing tactic for you, even if what your competitor's doing is winning, it is more likely that you'll have success doing something different, just by its very nature, to try and do something different because you want to scoop up a different set of customers. It will get very expensive if you and your competitor are simply outbidding each other on Google Ads, or putting an advert in the same paper, or whatever it is. So what our competition is doing, if anything, might be a guide to doing something else rather than doing the same.